The Burmese python has become one of the most successful invasive predators in modern history. It has silently spread across the Florida Everglades, consumed millions of native animals, reshaped entire food chains, and forced wildlife biologists into a battle they may never truly win. What's most remarkable is that none of this was supposed to happen just a few decades ago. The Burmese python didn't exist anywhere in the wilds of Florida. Today, it has become one of the most powerful predators in one of America's greatest ecosystems. So how did a giant snake from the jungles of Southeast Asia travel halfway around the world, conquer the Everglades, and permanently change the future of Florida? This is the rise of the Burmese python. To understand how the Burmese python transformed Florida, we first have to understand the animal itself. Its story didn't begin in Florida. It began thousands of miles away, in the tropical forests and wetlands of Southeast Asia. There. The Burmese python is simply another predator, one among many. When it first hatches, it measures little more than 2 feet in length, small enough to fit comfortably in a person's hands. But it doesn't stay that way for long. Year after year, it continues to grow. A healthy adult commonly reaches 12 to 16 feet in length. The largest females can exceed 18 feet and weigh more than 200 pounds. Unlike venomous snakes, the Burmese python doesn't rely on venom to kill. Its weapon is extraordinary strength. Hundreds of powerful muscles work together as its body coils around its prey. With every breath the prey exhales, the coils tighten until breathing becomes impossible. Then, with jaws capable of stretching far beyond the size of its own head, the python swallows its prey whole. Deer, wild pigs, even alligators. It's one of the largest and most powerful snakes on Earth. Yet, in Southeast Asia, it was never the ruler of the forest. It evolved alongside tigers, large crocodiles, monitor lizards, and countless other predators competing for the same food. For thousands of years, nature kept everything in balance. But when that same predator arrived in Florida, it entered a world completely different from the one it had left behind. The climate felt familiar. The wetlands stretched for miles, food was everywhere, and perhaps most importantly, there were almost no natural predators capable of stopping a fully grown Burmese python. For the first time in its evolutionary history, the Burmese python had almost everything it needed to thrive. No one realized what was happening at first. A few unusual sightings, a snake crossing a road, another captured deep inside the Everglades. Most people assumed they were isolated incidents, escaped pets, nothing more. But while Florida looked the other way, the invasion had already begun. Hidden beneath the sawgrass, moving silently through dark water, a new apex predator was quietly establishing itself in one of America's most important ecosystems. And by the time scientists understood what they were facing, the Burmese python was no longer just surviving, it was taking over. So how did this giant reptile end up in Florida? The Burmese python didn't cross an ocean. It didn't migrate across continents, and it certainly didn't arrive in Florida on its own. It came because people brought it here. Beginning in the 1970s, America's fascination with exotic pets began to grow rapidly. People wanted animals unlike anything they had ever seen before. Parrots, monkeys, large reptiles, and few reptiles attracted more attention than the Burmese python. Every year, thousands of hatchlings were imported from Southeast Asia into the United States. At only 2 or 3 feet long, they appeared calm, beautiful, easy to handle. For many owners, they seemed like the perfect exotic pet, but the animal they brought home wasn't going to stay that size. Within just a few years, many had grown longer than the people who owned them. Some weighed well over 100 pounds. Feeding them became expensive, housing them became difficult, and safely handling such a powerful snake required experience that most owners simply didn't have. Some surrendered their pythons to wildlife organizations, others found new owners. But not everyone made responsible decisions. Some snakes escaped damaged enclosures, others were deliberately released into the wild. At the time, almost no one believed they could survive. After all, Florida wasn't Southeast Asia. Many experts assumed winter temperatures would eventually wipe them out. They were wrong. Southern Florida offered almost everything a Burmese python needed: a warm climate, vast wetlands, abundant prey, and almost no natural enemies capable of killing a fully grown adult. Then, in 1992, Hurricane Andrew struck South Florida, one of the most destructive hurricanes in American history. Homes were destroyed, animal breeding facilities were heavily damaged, numerous captive animals escaped during the chaos. Exactly how much Hurricane Andrew contributed to the growing python population is still debated today. But by the late 1990s, sightings of wild Burmese pythons were becoming more frequent. Then came breeding, then hatchlings, then an entire generation born in the Everglades. What began as a handful of escaped and released pets was becoming a self-sustaining wild population, and once that happened, there was no turning back. At first, the Burmese python seemed like nothing more than another escaped exotic pet. But beneath the waters of the Everglades, a silent invasion was already underway. Year after year, the pythons bred unnoticed, each female capable of laying dozens of eggs at a time, with almost no natural predators and an endless supply of prey. Their numbers continued to grow. Then, scientists began noticing something deeply disturbing. The Everglades was becoming quieter. Wildlife surveys that had once recorded raccoons almost everywhere suddenly found almost none. Marsh rabbits became increasingly rare. Opossums nearly disappeared from large areas. Even bobcats, one of Florida's most adaptable predators, declined dramatically in regions where Burmese pythons had become established. The python wasn't hunting just one species. It was consuming the foundation of the entire ecosystem. More than 90 different species of mammals, birds, and reptiles have been documented in the diets of wild Burmese pythons. Every successful hunt removed another piece of Florida's natural balance, but the consequences didn't stop with wildlife. As the python population expanded, the snakes began following canals, roadways, and drainage systems built by people. Gradually, they moved closer to neighborhoods. Residents started reporting giant pythons crossing roads, swimming through backyard canals, hiding beneath sheds, curled inside chicken coops. Some even appeared in public parks and golf courses. For many Floridians, the Burmese python was no longer something that existed only in the Everglades. It had become part of everyday life. Pet owners worried about small dogs and outdoor cats. Farmers lost chickens and other livestock. Wildlife officers responded to an increasing number of sightings every year. Florida suddenly faced a problem few places in the world had ever experienced: an invasive predator capable of growing over 18 feet long, living almost invisibly, just beyond the edge of civilization. And by then, removing a few snakes was no longer enough. The invasion had become one of the greatest wildlife challenges in modern American history. By the early 2000s, Florida had accepted a difficult reality. The Burmese python was no longer an isolated problem. It had become a permanent part of the landscape. The question was no longer how to stop the invasion, it was whether the invasion could still be controlled. Wildlife officials launched one effort after another. Professional hunters were hired to search the Everglades. Biologists fitted captured pythons with radio transmitters, known as scout snakes. These tracked pythons unknowingly led researchers to other hidden snakes during the breeding season. Detection dogs were trained to locate pythons hidden beneath dense vegetation. Airboats carried search teams deep into remote wetlands. At night, thermal imaging cameras scanned the darkness for the faint outline of a giant snake. Then came one of Florida's most unusual conservation programs, the Florida Python Challenge. Every summer, hundreds of volunteers from across the country enter the Everglades, competing to remove as many invasive pythons as possible. Some participants spend days walking through waist-deep water, battling heat, mosquitoes, and thick vegetation for the chance of finding a single snake. Together, Thousands of Burmese pythons have been removed from Florida over the years, some measuring over 18 feet long, but despite all those efforts, scientists believe many more remain hidden. No one knows exactly how many Burmese pythons still live in the Everglades. Some estimates suggest tens of thousands. Others believe the true number could be much higher. Because unlike most invasive animals, the Burmese python is extraordinarily difficult to find. Its camouflage blends almost perfectly with the sawgrass. It can remain completely motionless for hours, and much of the Everglades is simply too vast for people to search effectively. The challenge facing Florida was never just removing snakes, it was finding them before they disappeared into one of the largest wetlands in North America. More than half a century has passed since Burmese pythons first entered the American pet trade. Today, their descendants occupy one of the largest wetlands in North America. Despite decades of research, millions of dollars in funding, and thousands of snakes removed from the wild, no one believes the Burmese python can be completely eliminated from the Everglades. The challenge is simply too great. The Everglades covers more than 2 million acres, a maze of marshes, canals, mangrove forests, and dense sawgrass. Much of it remains inaccessible, even to experienced wildlife teams. Some pythons spend weeks without moving. Others disappear beneath the water for hours. Many are never seen by people at all. Scientists continue developing new technologies. Environmental DNA can detect traces of python genetic material in water. Artificial intelligence is being trained to identify snakes from aerial imagery. GPS tracking has revealed movement patterns that were once impossible to observe. Each new discovery helps, but none offers a complete solution. For Florida, the goal is no longer to erase the invasion, it is to slow it, to protect what remains, and to prevent the Burmese python from spreading even farther. Because if history has taught us anything, it is that invasive species rarely stay where they first appear. One decision, to import an exotic pet. Another, to release it into the wild. The consequences have now lasted for generations. The Burmese python didn't choose Florida. It simply did what nature designed it to do. The real lesson is how easily people can change an ecosystem and how difficult it is to change it back. For now, the battle for the Everglades continues, and somewhere beneath the sawgrass, another python is already waiting.